Let's start. So it's so good to see you all. Welcome. Welcome, dear colleagues, guests, and friends. Um, we know each other, but yeah, my name is Dora Ivanova from the Butluja Project Foundation, and welcome to this Heritage Agora on the topic of communicating dissonance. Um, so I want to thank you, all the presenters, that you share your knowledge, and I want to thank you also for um, doing all this great work in your heritage project. So I'm thrilled that within this forum we have 24 presenters from 14 countries, and we also have 6 volunteers which will help us to moderate this event, and I want to thank you all for that. And it sounds like a 3-day program, but it is an express 3-hour event. So we are directly diving into the dissonance waters. And we want to do that with a question to help you wake up if you haven't so far. And we'll use Slido for that. Slido, you can see it's a small box on the upper side of the screen where you can click OK. And I want to ask you, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear dissonant heritage? Um, so I guess the Slido will come in a moment. Here it is. Yes. Don't think too much, just the first association, the first word that comes to your mind about dissonant heritage. And of course, this is a small trial of our Slido tool, which we are going to use later. As for interaction with the entire audience. Somebody's writing in the chat stress, but please write it down into the Slido. This topic architecture, opportunity, okay. Answers coming up, popping out. Conflict, uncertainty, definitely. Conflict, more conflict. Nationalism, the real issues. Political change of mind. Danger and destruction. Contested values, okay. Regime architecture. That's an interesting test. Sense of importance, protection, colonialism, obviously several times. It's getting bigger. Fear, danger of single narrative. That's important when we talk about communicating dissonant heritage. Protection, cultural dissonance. Okay. So we can still look at this slide if there are more topics to pop out. And meanwhile, I would like to share what we were thinking of dissonant heritage while we were organizing this event, and to be on the same page. So dissonant heritage can include places related to National Socialist, Fascist, nationalist, or communist regimes, as well as places related to war, persecution, or colonization. Dissonant, dissonant is not a fixed label, it is rather a symptom that can erase or fade away depending on the controversy between present and past. Dissonant heritage can be connected to negative memories, but also to conflict and to controversial readings of the past. As dissonance can be everywhere, we are having a starting point and a focus, and this is the built heritage from the 20th century in Europe. And this heritage is often neglected, abandoned, endangered, but it has a lot of potential. And it has a potential for educational purposes because narrating the places which show the lack of democracy and the lack of human rights is important to understand and to appreciate European and democratic values, which can be so fragile nowadays. Second, the develop topic of dialogue and tolerance is important to understand the past and to be better prepared for the present. And third, for urban and cultural development, dissonant heritage has a potential to develop tourism and economic growth. So this is so much potential into it, but to be able to unlock it, we need to be able to communicate it. However, we also need to communicate the place itself. And then many questions come out. So what is the story to be told at such dissonant heritage places? Who decides what this story is? What do we do when they are opposing parallel stories? How do we preserve a place without provoking nostalgia? And how do we do it? How do we preserve it for democratic education? So with all these questions, we started a European partnership, and we are very thankful to all our partners and co-organizers of this event, which are the European Observatory on Memories, the Department of Architecture at the University of Bologna, Atrium European Cultural Route, Euroclio, and the Dissonant Heritage Action Group. And our goal in this partnership is to develop inclusive, democratic process to narrate the legacy of undemocratic history so that we can create a methodology which can be used for other dissonant heritage sites. And you can learn more about this project and the funding opportunities of Citizens' Equality, Rights and Values program of the EU, which supported this project in session 1. And here I give the word to Lubomira Momcheva from the Buzluja Project Foundation, my dear colleague, who will moderate it. Let's start with session 1.
Thank you, Dora, and thank you all, and thank you all for being here. Session 1 is dedicated to our current European project on dissonant heritage communication. Within the next 1 hour, you will hear 4 short presentations. We will begin with a sneak peek into the SURF program, and then each project consortium partner will present their own work. After you've heard all the presentations in session 1, you will have the opportunity to join one of our 4 breakout rooms for a Q&A session, which will be dedicated to each of these topics: the SURF program, the Buzluja project, fascist heritage, and the Modelo prison. If you have a question, please don't write it in the main room, as it will get lost once you get redirected to the breakout room you choose. You should rather write it down on a piece of paper, and then once you have entered your selected breakout room, you can ask via the built-in chat. Now, it is my real pleasure to give the word to Dr. Pascal Falek from the European Commission. And the administrators, please share the screen so that we can see the presentation on the remembrance strands of the SURF program. Dr. Falek?
Good morning. Thank you very much, Miran and Dora. And good morning. I'm very pleased to be here with you today and to start to give you some insights on this program. And firstly, I wanted to congratulate you for the work you're doing, for all organizations that joined together, and for basically being one of the winners in the selected projects that was awarded through the SURF Remembrance Strand. And your project has been selected only because it's a project of excellence. It's one that scored the highest. Among it, we selected 10% of the proposals were selected for this call, and really because it contributes to the creation, as Dora mentioned, reflection on European history, reflection on who we are today because of our past, and how we can build together a more inclusive society for the future, based on this reflection on our difficult past. So really thank you for the work you're doing on the ground, and thank you for also launching this session today to continue the reflection with the different partners. Next slide, please. And yeah, just to say on myself, I'm a historian by training, and I work now for above around 4 years in the European Commission DG Justice in the Unit C2 on fundamental rights, more specifically on fighting anti-Semitism in the team of the coordinator on combating anti-Semitism, with a clear also focus on the file related to the SURF program and the calls in the SERF Remembrance Strands. So the SERF program is the one, it's a larger EU program on fundamental rights with 1.5 billion euro for the 7 years of the MMF, the budget, so until 27. And as you can see, you have four main pillars. Next slides, please. Yes, next, yeah. So we're gonna focus on the citizens engagement ones. We have union values, equalities and rights, citizen engagement, and Daphne. And we focus really on this part. So it's a very large program where you may also have a look at some point on the union values, different calls, because there are some overlap in it. So next slide, please, citizens engagement with the European Remembrance Strand. So this is really the strand we are focusing on. With this year, there will be 14 million euros allocated to it. And the main objectives are really to commemorate defining moments in modern European history, to raise awareness of our common history, cultural heritage and values, and really to enhance the understanding of the Union. Next slide, please. So I was mentioning just before, we have this year, so in 2024, and the call is almost going to this. And I mean, the deadline is very soon. 14 million euros in the planning. There should be more, but it will also depend in the next years with the next parliament about, I mean, how much money they will devote to fundamental rights. So we will see, and we hope it will continue to expand. But you really see a rise in terms of funding for supporting projects of civil society to focus on building this common European history and reflecting on building our future based on our historical past and how we can learn from it. Next slide, please. And the call and the different calls really serve to the implementation of DG Just and the EU different policies, being on implementing the EU Roma strategic framework, the anti-racism action plan, the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, the new No Place for Hate communication, LGBTI equality, strategy on combating anti-Semitism. The idea is really to work on European remembrance. Next slide, please. In the remembrance strands, you have, so that this year is different from last year, but you have this year 4 strands, 4 different possibility for applying. When you submit a project, you will have to choose in which category you fit better, and you have different budgets allocated for the 4 different priorities. So democratic transition, rebuilding, and strengthening society based on the rule of law, democracy, and fundamental rights. The second priority is really strengthening the remembrance of the Holocaust, of war crimes and crimes against humanity. The third one is migration, decolonization, and multicultural European society. And the fourth, European integration, and its defining achievements. Next slide, please. And here I will share, we can share the slide afterwards because it's a lot of information, but I prefer to give you more than less. So really priority 1, you have a budget of 1.5 million euro on EU values, but really a transition to democracy. Right. So this project could have been fed into here, but you can also decide which one you really think is better for your project if you want to resubmit one in the next years. Next slide, please. Priority 2, really on remembrance of the Holocaust, genocides, war crimes, crimes against humanity. And for 2024, we have 8.8 million euros available in this specific priority. Next slide. Priority 3. So this one is the smaller slides. The slide will be shared, David. The slide can be shared after the presentation if that would be helpful for you. So really migration decolonization, that we expect here to have projects that will serve the implementation of the EU anti-racism action plan. So really migration, colonialism, post-colonial societies. Next slide, please. And the last priority, European integration, really the specific rights and achievements through the enlargement and to the integration process. Next slide, just to give you some insights of which kind of activities can be supported through this program and what we expect. It's really not a focus on the research project, but more on activities that will lead to having people connecting to each other, meeting to each other, exchanging ideas, exchanging knowledge. Could be also through trainings. It could be through intergenerational exchanges, but really to work with the civil society organizations, with NGOs, memorials, institutional museums that are involved. And also it can be linked with public authorities joining to the project. Next slide. The impact is, I mean, as what you're doing today, basically, more awareness, more reflection on our past, on how to build it full of screen to make the slide better. So that's maybe for you. Better awareness of the rights and achievements of European integration, and engagement to really implement the different strategies, the equality strategies from the EU, build transnational coalition on European memory, and here we are to combat historical distortion, revisionism, negationism, and we see the different threats today. Also with foreign interference really present in today Europe. And next slide, please. What's the project should aim at? So really to deliver sustainable, concrete results for a clearly defined target group. And the idea is for the project to be able to continue to be implemented even after the funding ended. To link this past to the present, we have a strong historical component while exploring current day challenges. To share the knowledge and to have different actors involved, from memorial, public authorities, NGO, civil society organization. To be replicable, so that's something you mentioned, Dora, to have activities that you can find to how to share it with different practitioners, to be replicated in other contexts, in other countries, at other level. And also, like, so it's like a tip for the project, if you want to submit it, to have the right size. So really to think about the project with no excessive funding that can be covered with the budget you proposed. And next and last slides. Yeah, so as I was mentioning, the call is open today, but I'm aware it's closing next week on June 6th. So it might be, if you have not looked at it, it might be, really too short to apply for this year. But the good news is that we open a new call next year, so it's every year. So I really encourage those who are interested to have a look even at the proposal, at the possibility for this year, and to prepare for the next one if you are interested to submit, not to hesitate to ask any questions. And I remain really open to try to answer as best as possible your questions today or in the future. Thank you for your attention. And as I said before, on behalf of the European Commission, thank you for all the work you do on the ground. It's extremely important, especially in this difficult time and ahead of the EU elections.
Thank you, Dr. Falek, very much for this positive start of our event. I remind all of you that you can write your comments after you select a breakout room after the end of this session. And maybe if Dr. Falek can share an email, you can also write additional questions if there's something more complicated. Now we continue with our next speaker, co-organizer and moderator of this forum, as well as founder and CEO of the Buzluja Project Foundation, Dora Ivanova. She will talk about the multi-layered approach to communicate Buzluja Monument. Dora?
Thank you very much, Lubomira. Thank you very much, Dr. Falek. It's an honor for us to work on this project and to have the support of SERF. And for everybody here in the room, I just want to share that I learned about this program for such a presentation exactly 2 years ago. And it was, again, very short to apply in the same year. But we used the time and applied for the year after, and here is the result. So I want to to invite you everybody to try or to use these possibilities if it matches your project. It's really a great opportunity to developing projects that support European and democratic values. And now I want to share our project and what we do actually at the Buzluccia Project Foundation. I will share my screen. So it's a lot to be said, but in very short, so this is the Buzluccia Monument, and it's located in the middle of Bulgaria on a historically significant mountain peak, where the last fight of Haji Dimitar took place. This was a fighter for the liberation of Bulgaria from the Ottoman Empire. And later on the same place, the Bulgarian Social Democratic Worker Party was founded. And to connect and glorify the successor of this party, the monument was built. So the full name of the building was the House Monument of the Bulgarian Communist Party at Buzluccia Peak. And the construction work started by the Bulgarian Military Construction Forces in 1974 and finished in 1981 when the building was opened. And there were 6,000 people participating in the process, and it was funded by obligatory donations by the Bulgarians. So the monument was designed by the great Bulgarian architect Georgi Stoilov. This is how it looked inside. And it was used for only 8 years. It was clearly a propaganda place. There was an impressive light and sound show in this main hall, and up to 500 people will come here every full hour and will watch this show. Additionally, there were political ritual events which were happening in the same hall. After the end of the socialist regime in Bulgaria, the building was abandoned in the beginning of the 90s. And first of all, the copper, which was used to cover the ceiling, was stolen. And also all the reusable furniture and materials were stolen, so that the interior was left to the elements in the last 30 years. So Buzluccia became a place for urbex tourism in this time, for photography and artistic interventions, which actually made its international internet fame as the most or one of the most popular Bulgarian buildings. On the other hand, though, many Bulgarians hold traumatic memories about the regime and associate them with exact this place. So I didn't know this building before, and it was the 2013 when I first learned about it, and I dedicated my master thesis at the Technical University of Berlin, where I was studying at this time. And later in 2015, I founded the Buzluccia Project Foundation. And in 2018, Buzluccia became one of the 7 most endangered heritage sites in Europe. This is a program by Europa Nostra and the European Investment Bank Institute. And this program was a turning point for the initiative where the real project started to shape. And here again, one possibility and one opportunity for you and your project. The next call for nomination for the 7 most endangered 2025 is now on, and it will be open until the 15th of September. And I can only recommend this program because it helped us so much. And then later in 2019, with the tremendous help of ICOMOS Germany, we received the very first funding for the project, which was by the Getty Foundation in Los Angeles. And in the coming years, step by step, institutions, funders, academic partners, and volunteers supported the effort. And here you can see some of the logos. First, we developed a conservation management plan and conducted all physical studies to understand the condition of the monument and to create a strategic plan for its conservation. And we realized at that moment that the mosaics inside are the most endangered element, and we need to act very fast if you don't want to lose them. So actually in this building, we have almost 1,000 square meters of mosaics, and about 2/3 are still there. However, 40% of those were detached from the wall and would have fallen within months if no action were taken. So in the next years, 2020, 21, and 22, we implemented emergency conservation measures with the team of restorers from the National Academy of Art in Bulgaria, the Technical University in Munich, the Bern University of the Art, and the NGO Diadrasis from Greece. So we were able to stop the decay and to preserve what's still there. Our next project in 2022 was to clean the debris and to secure the monument. So we cleaned the roof, all main spaces, and construct a safe visitor pathway so that thousands of visitors that go there every weekend can visit the inside. However, the building is still not open because it is a state property and the state has to develop a management model to allow that. So with constant change of government in the last years, this turned out to be a challenge, but I'm sure that there is a way to find out how to develop this model so that the building can be open for visitors soon. However, the long-term goal is not just to open it for visitors in the condition today, but to turn it into a place for historical interpretation, cultural events, and contemporary art that interpret the place and the history. Our strategy is not to restore, but to conserve and to reuse the place by saving all the layers of history, including the broken tiles and the graffitis, as we think that all these layers are crucial in telling the story of the recent past in a critical and multi-layered way. To communicate that, we are creating different types of events, like the one today, but we also have physical events. So here you can see pictures of our last Cultural Heritage Forum, which is taking place in Sofia, and the next forum will be on the 3rd and the 4th of December. So you're very much welcome to come to Bulgaria and to exchange personally within this event. And also, beside the forum where we have expert discussion, we also organize an event for the broader public. This is the Open Buzluđa Festival. This year, it will be the 4th edition. It's a festival with 3 music stages, with highly impressive 3D mapping show on the facade of Buzluđa, which is telling stories, and with enriching and engaging daily program. The next festival is from the 8th to the 11th of August, and I want to warmly invite you to visit and experience it for yourself as well. So beside events, we communicate the cause through social media, and we learn that dissonance can be difficult to handle, but provokes a lot of interest. And actually, many international media have broadcasted articles and reports about the project, which is helping a lot. And at the end, I actually want to tell a little bit about the most important project for us right now. Because while we are working on all and communicating it, we realized that what makes Buzluđa still dissonant is the undefined story and the unclear message of this place. So thanks to the SERF program and funding, together with our partners, in the next 2 years, we will be developing the narrative of Buzluđa. The way we will communicate this place will be part of our goal. So we don't want to substitute the old propaganda with a new one by imposing one and only story. We want to involve as many people as possible into a democratic process where multiple and multivocal stories can find their place. Therefore, we are starting with oral history campaign to interview witnesses and experts. Then we will conduct focus groups, which will debate on the main controversial critical topics. We'll be making historical, anthropological, art historian, and further analysis of the intangible part of this heritage. And our goal is to develop the prototype of the first exhibition on site, and as well as a digital twin in an online experience. Therefore, we believe that the communication of dissonant heritage is the main and most important step when we deal with the preservation of it, and we hope that this event is an inspiration for that. And thank you very much for sharing this event and this opportunity with us today.
Thank you, Dora, for once again summarizing 10 years of work into 10 minutes. And if anyone has any questions on the topic, you can select breakout room 2 after the end of the session and ask them there. Now we have the pleasure to greet not only one, but two speakers from the architectural department of the University of Bologna, our Italian partners. They will present their topic, public involvement and oral histories, the untold stories of fascist heritage. Associate Professor Leila Signorelli and Alessia Zampini, the screen is yours.
So thank you for the presentation. I'm going to share the screen. I hope everybody can see it clearly. Okay, so good morning. I'm Leila Signorelli, and together with my colleague Alessia Zampini, we are going to present the activity of the University of Bologna team in the SERV project. Let me just spend a few words about the university. Our university is a higher education institution with 32 departments and 5 campuses in all the Emilia-Romagna region. These campuses have a distinctive scientific and educational identity. In the case of the SERV project, is the one of Cesena, the one who is most connected to the project, as there we have the Faculty of Architecture. Our heritage, our unit has a long tradition of heritage conservation related to difficult legacies. We started about 10 years ago working with a student of the Heritage Conservation Lab in the design studio. We worked on the rationalist architecture of the city of Forlì, first with the kindergarten Santarelli, and then with the Casa del Fascio, which is one of the most symbolic, let's say, building of the propaganda of the fascist regime. We worked always in agreement with the Ministry of Culture, in particularly with the Emilia-Romagna region division, and in collaboration with the Atrium Cultural Route, which is associated partner in this project. So since that time, we started this research line in some way to tell the untold stories of fascist regime, so to cast a light upon this, the conservation of this kind of heritage. And this research line led us to different kind of depth and different kind of activities and knowledge. We activated PhD research on that, postdoc research program. We developed competitive project. We are right now, there's an ongoing national funded project, which is Cocoa War, which is on the same kind of topics. And also we worked last year on a workshop which was about the Druso barracks in Silandro. Apart from that, also conference, talks, and other kind of activities. So through and thanks these kind of experiences, we are partner of this project. Among the foreseen activity, we already accomplished the work package 1. We organized an international workshop in Cesena, which was focused on oral histories and how to deal with oral histories to tell the stories about this kind of legacies. And I leave the floor to Alessia Zampini, which will go more in depth about the 3 days workshop we held in the last March.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I would like to present you the first result of this first event of this project that we had in these days in March. It was a 3-day event, and the final, let's say, the aim and the goal of the 3 days workshop with different stakeholders and partners involved was to start collecting skills and expertise in order to find a methodology for collecting oral history and trying to understand which stories are relevant or how to collect it, or better, all of them are relevant. How to collect these stories in order to tell the dissonance and to tell the stories of these places. In the terms of the survey project, we had a strong connection with the mosaics heritage, so we decided to work on the Collegio Aeronautico in Forlì, which was one of the propaganda building in the Forlì, so one of the cities which is related to the birthplace of Benito Mussolini, so the fascist dictator. And we decided to organize this workshop, having, first of all, some site visit in order to let our partners understand the dissonance, the stories of these places, and the different state of even of conservation that these two places have now registered because of the different process that they had after the war and after the abandonment. So the Casa del Fascio, which was the house party in the birthplace of Mussolini, so in Pedapio, and this Collegio Aeronautico, where there is this huge amount of mosaics that on the other side was never abandoned, but continued to be used all over the years as a school. In here, we had a workshop with the INA, which is a local association that is working with oral histories and with especially educational program with younger students and younger generations. And they helped us in understanding how to look at these mosaics and using these image and pictures to make questions related to contemporaneity. Then on day 2, we had a different kind of approach. We organized a cross-project event, first of all, that you can see some of the picture. And because we realized that a lot of stakeholders and partners were there and were sharing experience. So we had this discussion in order to find a common path and point of connection between all the projects. In specific, just to name some of them, all the different projects that are led by Unibo University, by the Atrium Route, which is our partner, and that has a leading role in all the dissonance-related projects, especially here in Italy and especially in our region. But also the municipality of Cesena that was hosting us and presenting their project Archetics, EUROM, and that is also a partner of the project. So we have this cross-project event and also a public event named Narrative of Dissonant Heritage, where we tried to explore how the architecture, cinema, and theater can help us in depicting and telling the stories of these places. We had a director of documentary. We had two directors, as one sociologist and one psychologist, and also one theater director that helped us in understanding even how transmedial experience can help us in doing and telling the stories of difficult places or different heritage. At the end, on the day 3, instead, we had our last workshop with the Italian Association of Oral History that helped us understand exactly how to conduce interview, how to collect these memories. So we are trying to match their experience. They had this great experience from World War II project or also fascist period in collecting memories. So we tried to collect their experience and all the experience coming from the group of work. The expected output of this activity is a methodology guideline document that will be shared in the frame of the survey project, where we would like to help other practitioners and experts in the field in finding, let's say, some bullet points to follow in order to conduct interviews, to reach the people and to make the narration also inclusive and taking in consideration all different and plural perspectives that this heritage inevitably has in their insight. So thank you so much for the attention, and thanks for leaving us the floor and this space for telling about the project.
And thank you both for the interesting presentation. If you have any questions on the topic of fascist heritage, you can choose breakout room 3 after the end of the session. The closing presentation of this session will be given by Professor Jordi Guixé, the director of our partnering organization from Spain, European Observatory on Memories, EUROM. He will present the museological project for the Modelo prison in Barcelona and tell us how to expose the dissonance by using art interpretation as a tool. Professor Guichet, you have about 8 minutes to finalize this session. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you can see my screen. Is it working?
I can't see it. Do you see it?
Not yet.
No, it's not. Sharing, is this? Can you see it?
Technical team, could you assist, please?
I'm clicking on sharing screen.
You're now sharing a whiteboard.
You should have
Yes, we see the whiteboard. Is this what are we supposed to see?
No, we have to see,
No.
we have to see pictures.
Do you see a big green button on the end, share screen?
Yes, I click it.
If
I'm doing it.
If you can stop sharing this.
You should select the window that you want to share.
This one?
Now we see a Word document.
So when you click the share screen, then you can choose which file you want to show us. Now.
Yes, it works.
Sorry.
Now you have 5 minutes.
Oh, please.
So you can do it.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you all the partners and the consortium, and of course, SERF program. To be very fast, we work on dissonant and comfortable heritage. Of course, also because it's a strong topic, has in Italy, but in Spain too, with nowadays, above all, a strong narrative in between different positions and political sides, but also because we had a very long dictatorship, as you may know, and we still have on our public space many monuments and many buildings. Besides, we have two laws from 2007 and 2022 and 23 that they recommend and they oblige to remove or to reinterpret, resignificate this kind of big monuments. We work also in this formal group with a urban agenda with many of you, and of course it's a permanent project that we are working, not only with SERF, that we have an operating grant with the SERF program at the European Commission, but also with Barcelona City Council and with a state secretary of democratic memory that we have in the central government in Spain. And then this project, we are analyzing, we are researching, but we are doing citizens' participation, how to deal with this dissonant heritage and uncomfortable monuments. One of the three steps, basic, to be very short, first of all is research, of course, from history, from heritage, from architectural, etc. Then we are involved, the agents from civil society, experts from university, but also democratic memory, let's say, associations that we have some in Spain, the people from the cities or the towns that they are dealing with this kind of spaces, monuments, or architectural sites. And the third part of our project is also, let's say, maybe speculate. So work also with art faculty, architectural experts and faculties and architects to resignificate, to imagine how could deal with this project and then create even a real projects for the present, for the future. I will say for the future because we have also and always a kind of problem with these projects of funding, of course. They are not cheap, they are very expensive. They need to be brave in terms of political and democratic profiles and decisions, but also they need, they need a lot of investment. And there is, as you may know, in Bushusla and everywhere, there is the main topic to be discussed once the project more or less likes or agree with all of these parts acting on the projects. So we worked on many projects, not only in Spain, also abroad. This year we will focus also in the Ribes Altes part that is not recovered, and the concentration camp in the south of France. We are going to work also with colonialist monuments and colonial and slavery monuments, that they are very polemic and uncomfortable also in the public space. And one of the biggest projects that we are doing, we did also about Valle de los Caídos, this very big mausoleum. It was the tomb of the dictatorship, Francisco Franco. Then it is still waiting for a big project. And with the biggest monument that we have in Catalonia, talking about the Ebro battle during the Spanish Civil War. This is the highest and the biggest. This is a very controversial monument, and we did a project about this monument, and we are still working. As you may know, many of you visited this big prison, La Modelo, in Barcelona, to try to do a cultural center, memory site, and also a creation art space for citizens, and also for students, and of course professionals and artists. No, I will choose to show you some images. This is very quick. This is the big monument and about the.
I'm sorry. Could you please enlarge the images, make them full screen?
Full screen is here, like, yeah, better.
Yes, thank you.
And then very short, and we propose it, of course, after this research, and we are working also with master degrees, PhD degrees, that they are people who had who did a lot of research about this, but also just we imagine to recover the former bridge from medieval times, but to recover public space and a public agora for people, linking the both sides of the river in this Tortosa city, and of course breaking the verticality of the monument and all the symbology for the Franco victory and the fascist victory, but keeping a small space for a small interpretation center in the middle of this kind of agora space on the top of the bridge. Of course, this big project, the other project is the big project of La Modelo. And La Modelo, as you know, because we did some seminars with you, and we are doing now, it's working as a cultural center. For instance, we realize we've been doing this project since 2020, 2019, with an agreement with the City Council of Barcelona. And it has 4 legs. One leg, it was a participatory project with the City Council, but with the people and the citizens of the area, l'Eixample, a very dense and urban area in the city center of Barcelona. And everybody is a big platform of different collectives and associations. And we decided together with the City Council that this very big space in the urban area, it has one leg. It means about green zones, because it's very dense in urban. There is no parks, there is no green zones. The other will be public houses, not private, but public. Then memory site, of course, history and memorial site, and dignification of the history of this long history of the prison, different kind of memories in plural, I would say.
I'm sorry,
And
just
then,
to say 1 minute left. I'm sorry.
I am finishing. And then public equipment, like to schools and different public equipment for the elderly people and so on and so on and so on. Now the project has the main project is to keep, as you can see here in the image, only the panopticon has the major heritage point of the central prison. They are going more or less to modify all the other branches or legs of the prison and to keep the fourth gallery that it has more dense history on political prisoners and repression on the Spanish Civil War and then dictatorship, even the Second World War. And then some free on the open space areas that they are very important. The most we are working with architects on, we are researching on the project has for the Second World War with the Gisware internet here escaping from Europe and other histories. The more we are creative. I don't have the time to develop, but the key point is that we want to preserve some parts that the city council has already decided to destroy. So now we have the full prison, but we have to imagine how to deal with the ruins because there will be ruins there. So how to re-signify a place that this is not still a ruin. Maybe it's difficult to understand with my very bad English, but it's kind of a double speculation for, above all, for the creation, for the architects and for the artists, for the not for now, but for the next future. And we are fighting, I would say fighting also with the city council, with the team of architects that they won already this competition for this very big area to defend, of course, these human rights, this area of creation in memory aspects, and of course, the more physical heritage as we could preserve. Sorry for the time, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well for the presentation. I remind you all that now you will shortly see a button on the bottom for the breakout rooms, and you will be able to select the breakout room. You have 4 options, and please select the room that you're interested in, and you can ask your questions there. Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Hello. I said that we didn't finish. We were talking about. Sorry.
Dora, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. So our group was a little bit interrupted. I guess this happened also to the rest of you.
Yeah. We didn't finish.
Yeah, we didn't finish either. But that's the challenge when we have a 3-hour event. Yes, we try to make it as concise as possible. And I know that we all want to interact more. And the possibility for that is at the festival and at the forum where we can meet each other personally and have plenty of time to talk. But of course, if you still have questions, please write them. You can write them still in the chat here. I mean, we won't be able to answer them right away, but we can come back to you later. Or you can write us an email. You all have our emails. So yeah, we want to keep in touch, but we also want to keep the schedule so that we can be on time at this online event. So coming back, we are going to start our session number 2 in a moment. So physical events are great for more time, but online events are great because we can be all together in this room from so many different countries. So now I want to ask you, I'm really curious to see who is here. And I want to ask you in the Slido, where are you sitting right now? And where are you participating from? So we can open the Slido box and just write down the name of the country.
Can you share again the QR code? Okay, great.
Ooh, this worked fine. Good. Germany, a lot of Bulgaria, Spain, Sofia, it's a country, and Berlin as well. That's good. So please write the country, not the city, but yeah, city is also fine. We can find out where it is. Netherlands, France, Cyprus, Belgium, Wales, Denmark, UK. Great. Yeah, that's really the advantage of online events. It's quite amazing that we can connect from so far from each other. India, Turkey, Denmark, Bosnia and Herzegovina, welcome. Cool. Thank you. You can still write if you haven't answered. I'm really curious to see. So we have a lot of people from Bulgaria, Germany, and Netherlands, Spain, and Italy so far. But let's see when everybody writes down. And in the meantime, I want to introduce you the second session. So in the session, we want to draw your attention to the amazing Dissonant Heritage Action Group. It was created as part of the urban agenda for the EU. And through thematic partnerships, the urban agenda aims to develop recommendations for better regulation, better funding, and better knowledge for the EU. And although the urban agenda was concluded and finished in 2022, this group was so engaged and so successful that it continued meeting and exchanging. And not only that, it is an incubator for further projects and partnerships, including our projects we were presenting in session 1. And so to tell us more about the Dissonant Heritage Action Group, I want to give the floor to Jan Schultheis from the German Federal Ministry for Housing, Urban Development and Building, and Birgit Kann from the German Federal Institute for Research on Building, Urban Affairs and Spatial Development. Birgit and Jan, the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning. I hope you can hear me okay. Can you?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Unfortunately, my purple background disappeared, but I hope that's still okay. My colleague Birgit Kann and I, we will give you a joint presentation in the next few minutes. And first of all, congratulations, Dora and all the partners, to this very successful event on a very meaningful topic. And also a big thank you to the European Commission for supporting this event, this project, but also the reflections on dissonant heritage in general. My name is Jan Schultheis. I'm at the Federal Ministry for Housing, Urban Development and Building in Berlin. And I have been, together with Birgit, coordinating this group over the past few years. Next slide, please. And we would like to give you a very brief overview. What is the framework? How did we decide to focus on this topic? How are we working on this? Because we were able to conduct some research. And what are we currently doing on this? So I'll start, and please, next slide, with the urban agenda for the EU. It's maybe a somewhat complicated model, but I would like to just mention that the urban agenda for the EU is a very good framework for discussing relevant issues of the European city. And here on the screen, you see on the left various old partnerships that most of them have concluded on all kinds of topics. In this case, it's cultural heritage. And on the right side, you see the partnerships that are currently working or will start working very soon. Next slide, please. What's really important to know about the urban agenda, number one, is that it is about developing new instruments, new perspectives. It's not about doing something that's already been done, but discovering new paths. And the second relevant point is that it's a so-called multi-level approach, meaning the European Commission, member states, and cities sit at the same table and discuss these issues. Next slide, please. In the partnership on culture and cultural heritage, we looked into 11 specific subtopics ranging from all kinds of aspects within the field of culture and cultural heritage Here today, we want to focus on number 10, integrated approaches to dissonant heritage. What do we mean by this, and why did we decide to do this? The answer might not be surprising to you. Next slide, please. Because, of course, our starting point was the magnificent Buzluja monument. You've already heard about it. I won't go into more detail, but this was really the point for us to decide on a European view on this topic. And if you can go to the slide, when we started talking about Buzluja with Dora and the mayor, we realized, and this might be representative for dissonant heritage sites, you might be a local stakeholder, for instance, a mayor or an owner of a perhaps even smaller community. You have this dissonant heritage site, which requires an intensive work, but you have no means, neither financial or personnel resources to really work with it. And you might be a little bit afraid because it's such a difficult subject with so many emotions. That was really the starting point, and the point where we decided, yes, we have to look deeper and set up a process here. Next slide, please. Because the really important question might be how to even start a process of dealing with this heritage. And Dora already highlighted some of the steps she went. Who do you need at the table? What is your strategy? How can it be supported, both financially or locally? And how to really relate it to other issues and stakeholders within urban development. This is where we started. Next slide, please. And we are working on various levels. Yeah, of course, you see the inside. We can skip this. We've already seen this. Next slide, please. We are working on various levels. And one important column, yes, thank you. So the blue box in the top is the urban agenda that I just mentioned, and this action group. I'll just say the action group is a network of networks, and you will meet some of the members today. It's a significant platform for an open exchange on dissonant heritage, and you're warmly invited to join. Just get in touch with us. Free, you can come and go as you please, but it's a really valuable resource. And then below you see two more blue boxes. We were able to allocate funding for research projects to really go into more detail. And Birgit will talk about this in a moment. And then you see the green and red boxes, which are really very good synergies, spin-off projects, the Urbact City Network and the SURF project. We are very happy about all these synergies around the topic. Birgit, I think it's your turn now.
Okay, thank you, Jan. As Jan Schulte has already mentioned, I'm working for the German Federal Institute for Research on Building, Urban Affairs and Spatial Development. In short, it's BBSR, and I'm very happy to give you a very short overview over the results of the two research projects. One has been finished and one is still running right now. So when we started the research projects, the first challenges we faced were that there are so many different understandings and definitions of the term dissonant heritage. As we already saw in the little in the question that Dora posted in the beginning. So are we talking about heritage that is burdened with traumatic memories and associations, or are we rather talking about heritage that is associated with different or contradictory meanings and attributions, or is it both? Are we talking about intangible or tangible heritage? Do we need to differentiate between the origins of the dissonance, such as certain regimes or wars in, in European history? So in order to be more clear, also, for the beginning of the project, to define what we're actually talking about, we decided to set a focus on tangible site-based heritage of the 20th century in Europe, in small cities and in peripheric regions. Why? Because first of all, the funding program, it's an urban development funding program. So we are especially interested in the interaction between the heritage and urban development. And the 20th century, because it's still a relatively near heritage that has shaped and is still influencing our environment and society in Europe a lot. And small cities and peripheral regions, because we were interested in the question if it is actually, if the challenge is bigger when we are not in large cities. And we were interested to look at, especially at sites that were not, that have not been discussed so much yet. And in terms of dissonance, we defined the term so that we said it for us, we understand dissonant heritage as heritage that evokes negative or traumatic memories and associations in the society or in parts of the society, and or that is politically or ethically charged, but also heritage that is subject to controversial and or contradictory narratives. So we define the term for both contested and burdened heritage. So here are some examples of heritage sites that we looked at throughout the studies. So that is, for example, the Saaleck workshops in Germany that were built on behalf of Paul Schulze-Naumburg at the beginning of the 20th century and were used as a kind of think tank for Nazis. Or this is the former country estate of Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister, and it was later used as an educational institution of the Communist Youth Association in the former GDR. Or here is an example of a dissonant heritage site in France, the camp of Rives-Salt, that has been built as a military camp in 1939 and has been transformed into a camp for Jewish people from Germany and France in the Vichy regime from 1942 on. And a last example, this is the Tallinn City Hall in Estonia that has originally been built for the Olympic Summer Games of 1980 as the Lenin Palace for Culture and Sports. We investigated those sites and many more throughout Europe by doing surveys, interviews, and case studies with the aim to find out how those sites are different to non-dissonant heritage sites and what consequences that has in terms of potentials and challenges when dealing with those sites. And one of the results of this first research project was that dissonant heritage can have an important function for our society and democracy, despite or maybe even because of these mostly negative emotions and attributions, because of the dissonance. Because the site, as Dora has also already mentioned, can contribute to democracy building, for example, by learning how to deal with different and even contradictory opinions and associations and facts. And this already being confronted, already dealing with this dissonant heritage, you can benefit from this potential. And these are skills that in terms of social cohesion, and especially in these times, are very important. And another potential can be that these places offer a space for remembrance and of processing of unpleasant or traumatic events that maybe are likely to be pushed away or to be neglected, but that might be very important to remember and to be dealt with in order to learn from history, for example. But we also found out that dealing with this dissonant heritage requires a special approach, because often these sites have a connection to topics like war, loss, or persecution, and therefore, of course, need to be handled with a high degree of sensitivity. And because of these different perceptions and different stories that are told about these sites, it's especially important to use an integrated approach and to integrate as many different stories, different relevant stakeholders and parts of society as possible when dealing with these sites. A process that bears, of course, a very high potential of conflict and therefore needs to be prepared and moderated with care. And another very important characteristic of dissonant heritage is that there needs to be taken into account that what is perceived as dissonant always depends on the social and political and historical conditions, and therefore might change. As Dora said, dissonance is a symptom. It's not like a permanent condition. So the appropriate approach always needs to be re-questioned and rediscussed, and it's an ongoing process. And to manage and to implement this complex approach, it needs time and it needs financial and human resources. And these preconditions, of course, are often not there and they're often not easily created. And as a result, these sites often are not protected, fall apart, are in danger of getting instrumentalized or are exposed to vandalism. And with the work of the action group and the research project, we are trying to address these issues, and we want to encourage people to openly engage with these sites, to start discussions, to raise awareness for the necessity of a special approach to dissonant heritage, both on a political and on a social level. So at the moment, we are trying in the second research project to develop a toolbox that motivates especially local stakeholders in dealing with dissonant heritage sites. And that shows the potentials by offering different examples of heritage sites and different examples of how they use different instruments, procedures, and methods in order to deal with those sites. So we have developed 3 tool sets. Oops, sorry. I won't go into more detail. You're very welcome to join our session on the marketplace to learn more about the toolbox. And if you want to learn more about the research projects, you're very welcome to visit our webpage on www.dissonant-heritage.eu, where you can download a PDF orientation paper with the results of the first project. So, Jan,
Yes, maybe I can just conclude with a few more thoughts of activities. Maybe it's an introduction of the following sessions. There have been various ideas from the Dissonant Heritage Action Group to create more visibility for the topic. One idea is to have a webinar series on dissonant heritage topics. Another one, and I think Alexandra will talk about this, is a seminar on dissonant heritage and European citizenship. Next slide, please. We have the idea of having a wiki photo competition to raise awareness for the topic of dissonant heritage on a very low key level, very accessible level. Next slide, please. Another activity, of course, and we'll hear about it today, is the Urbact City Network that has grown from this group. And then the last one, of course, is today's event. So we are very happy. Next slide, please. We're very happy about these synergies and the momentum in this group, and we invite you to join us. You find our contact information. You can also visit dissonant-heritage.eu, which is a sister site of the new site of the SURF project, which I believe is dissonant-heritage.info. Thank you very much. I think now we will have some Slido questions, right?
Exactly. Now we have a little bit time of interaction with the public, and you can launch the first one.
We wanted to, if I'm not mistaken, the first question, and am I moderating this or will you, Dora?
It's you, Jan.
It's us. Okay. Since we talked about integrated approach and having all relevant stakeholders at the table, we are interested to know, we already know where you're from geographically, but now we would like to know which field, stakeholder group you're from, because it's our conviction that we need all of you at the table. We need many voices and many perspectives. And it looks like, thank you for filling in the Slido question. It looks like we have a lot of urban planners and architects, but it's quite a balanced picture. We have colleagues from associations and cultural sector, as well as the education sector. That's quite interesting and confirms that it's really a multi-level approach. Should we wait another few minutes or moments, Dora? We have 39 feedback so far.
I guess we can move to the next question.
Thank you. So it's clear 52% are from universities and research. Of course, research, and that's one of the findings, is also an important part of working on dissonant heritage. So I think that's a very strong image here. Yeah, next slide, please. We have two more questions, I believe. The next one is about the size of your location. As Birgit Kahn mentioned, we specifically focus on smaller cities and peripheral locations because we feel there are particular needs when it comes to dissonant heritage. And we wanted to see if perhaps you also come from smaller towns or if you're mainly from large cities, and the latter seems to be the case. 72% of you coming from cities bigger than 100,000 inhabitants. But again, there are also colleagues from smaller places, which confirms that we probably need to look at both, because there are similar needs, but then also different needs of smaller and mid-sized cities. And Birgit, if you have any comment, please feel free to join. Okay, perfect. We have 55 responses. I think it's very good. Clearly, many of you come from larger cities. Next and final question, and this goes into the direction of our toolbox, which we really see as a work of translating the knowledge we have gathered into practice. It's really a translation process because sometimes the academic results are not easily applicable in local practice. So we wanted to hear from you if you know of strategies or approaches that can help in practice, whether maybe it's a toolbox or I see now webinars. I think it's a very good point, and it's one thing we are considering as action groups. Oh, and we see even the names of the people who write it. That's interesting. Telling stories, which leads back to our topic today, placemaking approaches, artistic interventions. That's actually one of the tools in our toolbox, social media. Oh, there's more coming in that I can actually read. Perfect. Oral history, artists and inhabitants working together, more storytelling, community exhibitions. I hope we can save this and evaluate it later, because this is actually very meaningful also to our toolbox, because from my experience, also working in the urban agenda in general, it's really a translation. If I talk about the urban agenda, people will not maybe know what it is all about, and it's not necessary. It's really important to have lessons learned in daily practice, and you give us very good feedback. in situ transgenerational activities, dialogue. Perfect. This is very useful. Excellent. Thank you. Maybe we wait another few seconds. We have 38 feedback already. And I see one from Mr. Haspe. Good morning to you as well. Discussion. So it's about dialogue. It's about contextualization, walking tours. Very useful. Thank you very much. I look forward to looking at this in peace and quiet and evaluating. This is very valuable. And of course, we are happy to go further later on during the marketplace, where Birgit and I will present in some more detail the actual tools we are working with. And I think our time is up, right, Dora? Because we're also running a little bit behind.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you from my side too for the helpful comments.
Thank you very much, Jan and Birgit. Thank you for the presentation. And yes, the good news is, so Birgit and Jan was asking you some questions, but you can ask them some questions if you choose room number 1, advertisement now, for room number 1 later in the marketplace. And don't forget that after the end of the marketplace, you have, and we will all have 1 full hour of free interaction. So whoever wants and has an interest, we can still discuss there. And as you heard from their presentation, so the Dissonant Heritage Action Group has inspired the launch of an UR-backed project with the name Archetics. And Ileana Toscano from Italy will tell us how dissonant European heritage can be a for democracy. Ileana.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So first of all, I also wish to thank you, the Bosluja Foundation, for this invitation, and also congratulations for this interesting event. Yeah, so Archetics is an action planning network funded by the UR-backed program, which is a European program focused on the integrated urban development. Archetics indeed will develop a method for managing dissonant heritage through this UR-backed method that aims to involve local stakeholders and communities with the final goal to co-design an integrated action plan, and also to develop some testing activities to assess if this integrated action plan could work well in the different cities. The aim of this integrated action plan is to enhance the dissonant heritage as a non-divisive element of urban communities, but as a starting point for shaping new democratic identities. The project is led by the municipality of Cesena in Italy, already mentioned by the action group. And we also have Permet in Albania, Leros in Greece, Kazanlak in Bulgaria, with the case study of Bosluja, Krakow and Gdansk in Poland, Leipzig in Germany, Betera in Spain, and Villanova de Cerveira in Portugal. So many cities, different sites of the cities, all municipalities. And the project started in June 2023 and will end in December 2025. But let's see a bit which type of dissonant heritage we are focused on. Indeed, we have different types of dissonant heritage. Some of them are located in urban context, others are in rural area. We have small cities, big cities, so different dimension of this heritage, and also different period of this dissonant heritage. Indeed, we start with this old heritage in Portugal, built in the 13th century as border infrastructure, and continues to be a contentious infrastructure in the borderline between Portugal and Spain. Then we have some heritage belonging to the fascist period in Leros in Greece, and also in Cesena in Italy. We have Betera in Spain with this defensive line belonging to the Spanish Civil War and an air raid shelter. And we have the communist period in Albania, in Permet especially, with this iconic Congress building where the Communist Party started in Albania. And we have Gdansk and Krakow with the two neighborhoods as a case study to focus on through architects. We have also Leipzig with the Stasi headquarters in East Germany, and last but not least, we also are really honored to have with us also the municipality of Kasanlak and the case study of the Buzluja monument. So very different types. But which is the approach of architect? Indeed, Urbact provides to cities different type of exchange and learning, and we do that through network level exchange and learning, but also we support cities to promote this exchange and learning at the local level. And last but not least, cities, partner of architects, have also the opportunity to exchange with other cities funded by Urbact at program level. So different types of learning. But focusing on architects, the approach we decided to follow up has been inspired by this Italian archaeologist and art historian, so-called Salvatore Settis, that traced a link between architecture, citizenship, and ethics. And indeed, architects will develop these integrated action plans focusing on 4 project dimensions that are architecture, people, history, and ethics. Indeed, we want to promote, as already said by the other speakers, the multi-perspective approach to focus on dissonant heritage and to provide really a good integrated action plan that can consider the history aspect, the architecture, but also linking all the memories, the individual memories, and the public memories together with a critical interpretation of the past for coming into the present and then visualizing the future of our heritage. We have already some opportunities to follow up on this dimension. Indeed, in the last meeting in Gdansk, we follow up on the dimension of history and on the dimension of ethics. There is the recorded version of the masterclass we had with the participation of several experts. But what was really interesting is the opportunity to have to exchange or learn between cities, how it's possible to learn about a collective history, but also how it's possible to follow up on ethics, on diversity, on gender inclusion, to express better the democratic value that architects represent. The dimensions of architecture and people will be follow up in Tirana on the 19th of June, and we will be really happy because we will be in another iconic building, which is the Pyramid of Tirana, built during the communist dictatorship, and we will have this follow up with experts and practitioners. But which is the architects recipe that I want to share? I think it's really important that architects is a network of cities, because cities and the politics entities, the public administration are really important to be engaged when we want to focus on dissonant heritage. And architects achieved to bring together 9 cities across Europe. These 9 cities achieved to set up in each of these cities 9 Urbact local groups that are working groups working at local level that will meet at least 8 times in 2 years. And for each of these cities, we will have one city action plan, an integrated action plan, but also some testing activities that could be developed in also shaping together the integrated action plan. We will focus on these 4 dimensions, and we will have also 4 project deliverables at network level. Because also Archetics would like to share some common results about a possible charter and a common glossary for dissonant heritage, but also a city guide to manage dissonant heritage for public authorities, and an operational living lab for making sustainable also the participative approach. We will focus also on 3 cross-cutting issues that are gender, that we already discussed about, the digital transformation, and the green transition. For doing that, we have been organizing 7 core network meetings, but also some bilateral exchange. And what I want to share with you today is also that we are really interested in a follow-up on the possibility to enhance and to reflect on the dissonant heritage, reflecting on the digital dimension, the youth and the activist engagement, the community planning, the communication tools, the slow tourism, and the adaptive reuse of this heritage. And for doing that, we will organize several bilateral exchange between cities. Last but not least, I want to stress a bit about the Urbact Archetics approach, which is a sound participative approach that we are applying at network level, organizing interactive sessions for exchange and learning through participative tools, but also we are trying to supporting cities in providing this participative approach at local level and to share the insights we discuss about at network level, at local level. And last but not least, we really want to involve in the discussion also the vulnerable groups, because we believe that we don't want to let no one behind, and that our way to approach the public participation has to be most inclusive as possible. Thank you, and looking forward to hearing from you. And I also invite you to follow us on the Archetics webpage inside the Urbact website, but also to follow us through the social media that are Facebook and LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ileana. Do we have Slido questions now, also from your side?
Yes, how can I do that? Will you launch that, or I have to?
Yeah, that will be launched automatically in a moment.
Okay.
And you can start telling us about them.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Yes, the first question is a question about the participatory approach and the multi-perspective approach, because we are curious to know who already experimented some multi-perspective approach and the participatory approach. So it's really interesting that many of you have already experimented this approach, which is great. Some other very few times, but there is also a part of the group that maybe don't experience the participatory approach, or maybe just sometimes. Yeah, this is really interesting. Together with me today, there is also Sofia Burioli from the municipality of Cesena, who is the coordinator of the project. So I don't know if Sofia would like to join and to comment the results, because they are really interesting, the results of this. Yeah.
I'll just like to comment that you can go into the Slido by opening the Zoom, but you can also do it with your phone by the QR code that you see on the side. But we see that we have about half of the people already answered, so we can go to the next one.
Yes. The next one is a suggestion because as I told you, we would like to focus on several other subtopics that we want to achieve through the enhancement of dissonant heritage we are focusing on. And we are curious to know which is your suggestion that would be more important for you that architects will follow up on the adaptive reuse, for instance, or on the youth and the activist engagement, or maybe on the slow tourism, or again, to focus on most on the community planning, on communication tools, and on the digital dimension. I don't know how to have to pull. Okay. Yeah. For now, Dora, I think it's interesting that many people answer that it's interesting to focus on the adaptive reuse of dissonant heritage, but also on the youth and the activist engagement. Indeed, architects would like to provide some insights in the end of the project about how to engage young people and also some activists, because today we had the opportunity to meet Dora, and I have also the opportunity to meet her in person many times. But there are also other activists in different cities that are really interested in collaborating in some project for the enhancement of dissonant heritage. And many of these activists, they are young people. So it's really interesting that dissonant heritage could be an attractive element for the engagement of the young people.
Thank you, Lana. Yeah. And one more option to join, by the way, so we can open also a different window, write slido.com, and then write also the number of this poll. So that's also an option. Okay, and we can go to the last one.
Yes. The last one is a word cloud, and we would like to ask you a suggestion to follow up on the how we can focus on the cross-cutting team dealing with the green approach for dissonant heritage, because I maybe mention not so well, but just I started to mention that architects will also develop this integrated approach, focusing on these three cross-cutting issues: the digital transformation, the green dimension, and the gender approach. But sometimes we are not so well focus on the green aspect, because it seems that maybe for focusing on dissonant heritage is not so linked to the green transition. But we believe that yes, it's possible also for dissonant heritage to be green. And we really would like to ask you a suggestion, because all of you are expert on dissonant heritage, and now I can see that already some words are appearing, and we have the slow tourism. Yes, thank you. We are really interested in promoting slow tourism, in promoting the reuse, also in focus on the possibility to create some energy efficiency for our dissonant heritage. The passive house could be an experience. But also the local community integration, yes, we can see the sustainable materials, right, which is also another great insight. The reuse of existing buildings, sure. Sustainable architectural restoration, creating sustainable processes, yes, thank you. And sustainable architectural restoration, now it's in the front line. Long-term views. This is a really important aspect, yes. Indeed, the integrated action plans we will produce have to have a vision in a long-term view. So we will have different types of actions. Some of them will be developed in a short time, but other in a long term. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Elena.
Yeah.
And, in terms of our schedule, I would ask the administrator to leave this poll for a second while people are still typing. But in the meantime, I'll just first of all to congratulate you on this project, and also to say that here we have municipalities, and we are very thankful to Kazanlak municipality, on which territory Buzlucu Monument is located, that they are very relevant. I mean, they're supporting and developing the project as well. And their support is absolutely very valuable. And and also this involving locals is quite a amazing and working approach by Architects. Thank you for sharing this and for developing this project. And now I would like to move to the next topic, which is again born by the Dissonant Heritage Action Group. And Mesha Murali from India will present Capturing Histories, Wiki Loves Monument Approach to Dissonant Documentation, approach to heritage documentation. Mesha.
We
cannot
hear you, Mesha. You should unmute yourself.
Oh, I'm so sorry for that. Yeah, so thank you so much for that, Dora. And it's been quite interesting listening to all these various projects that are happening and initiatives that are going on around dissonant heritage and heritage documentation in general. So let me quickly start on my presentation. Let me share my screen. Yes, I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes. You can just tap double to have a full screen.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'll be talking about how we capture heritage as part of the Wiki Loves Monuments competition. And just to quickly introduce myself, I am Misha, and I'm based in India. And I'm currently working as a volunteer with the Wiki Loves Monuments International team. So what is Wiki Loves Monuments? So Wiki Loves Monuments is an international photography competition which focuses on capturing or documenting built cultural heritage. This started in, the first edition happened in 2010, and we've had 14 iterations of the competition since then. This competition is generally hosted and coordinated by a set of volunteers from across the world. It is a federated model of a competition, which means that we have local national level competitions that happen in each country, participating country. Each participating country has a team that hosts this team of volunteers who hosts the competition and coordinates with participants, helps them troubleshoot, helps the jury with the process of selecting winners, etc. And a set of 10 photographs are then submitted to the final finale, which is the international finale of the competition. And now at both the international as well as the national level of the competition, the main aim of it is to encourage participation in Wikipedia and other Wikimedia projects, while fostering an important need for digital documentation of built heritage sites across the world, right? So the competition is also an extension of the Wikimedia endeavor to promote and cultivate free knowledge systems where communities can document and share knowledge that is important to them and make it accessible for the wider audience to use and reuse, right? So as I said, we've recently concluded the 14th iteration of the competition in 2023. We've announced the winners, and I'd like to actually show you some of the pictures. So this is one of the winning pictures of the international version of the competition. You see the Pyramid of Giza from Egypt. Now, this was another picture that was part of the winning lot. Now, this was submitted as part of a special category that we had launched this year, which was heritage spaces that haven't been previously documented. So while the competition does have a lot of submissions of popular heritage sites from across the world, we also try and document diverse spaces which haven't been seen or documented in the online forum so far, right? So it also encourages a sort of inclusive and equitable documentation of knowledge, public memory, and histories. So as I've briefly mentioned, it's a very collaborative approach that we take as part of Wiki Loves Monuments. It is so in a world where digital technologies is all over the place, everyone is using it in form of social media, etc., to document our everyday lives. Such an environment, image submissions can then be considered a part of commons, as part of commons, which can then be freely accessible to everyone, given it gives the community rights to use these images and without the need to obtain any kind of permissions. An initiative like this helps communities feel empowered. In other words, the collective gets a way to tell their own stories, decide the kind of collective memory and heritage that needs to be preserved and how it can be preserved. And especially in times like we have today, where heritage structures are being destroyed because of natural disasters or human-made conflict, right? It becomes even more important that we focus on a collaborative approach to documenting heritage, especially in digital spaces, which can then become a crucial space for information and reservoir for future restorative projects. Moving on. We have been, as Jan had briefly mentioned, working with the Dissonant Heritage Action Group to come up with a special category for documenting dissonant heritage as part of the competition. Now, why is documenting photographs of dissonant heritage spaces important, right? As it is a collaborative approach, as I've already mentioned, of documenting built heritage, this not only allows underrepresented communities to share their knowledge across time and space, but it also gives these communities the opportunity to tell their story through their own perspective. In doing so, local communities get to reclaim their past from a majoritarian retelling. For example, one of the Wiki Loves Monuments editions that was hosted in Ukraine documented the removal of the Lenin statue in the country. Now, this documentation gave an opportunity for the local public to talk about their relationship with these statues, with the past associated with these statues. While these statues were considered historically important by the local government, the removal of these statues was a way for the local community to express the detachment from the history associated with these statues, which actually reminded them of the Soviet past. Now, given that these photographs are uploaded as part of the Wikimedia Commons, they are free of copyright restrictions. So they can be used and reused by the community and interested practitioners in various different ways to start conversations within the community. So some of the efforts that can, come out of this is hosting public exhibitions where you have some of the popular photos of dissonant heritage or related heritage sites, and host a community gathering and dialogue around these photographs. You can also use these photographs as memory triggers when you're conducting oral history interviews. So as part of a different project, I've used photographs of monuments that no longer exist, right? To talk to interviewees who we had been collecting oral histories from. So these photos were then shown to them, and they were asked about, oh, hey, do you remember the space? How did you interact with the space? What does the space mean to you? So in a way, this encourages dialogue and helps you actually create a more fuller narrative of how people have been engaging with space, what they feel about it, and how they would like to see it as part of their present as well as future. While we have been in the past couple of months talking about, creating a special category version of Wikilove's Monuments that talks about documenting dissonant heritage, there are a couple of challenges that we've been facing. One of the main challenges that we face is the restriction due to the lack of freedom of panorama. Now, what is freedom of panorama? In a lot of countries, art, architecture, and other buildings or any reproduction of these buildings is basically protected by copyright. Now, photographs of these works, when uploaded in a free knowledge platform such as Wikimedia Commons or Wikipedia, cannot come from a country where there is no freedom of panorama or which has copyright restrictions. So then it in turn kind of restricts the kind of heritage that you can document online or have conversations about. Now, these freedom of panorama restrictions can differ from country to country. In some countries, you can the restriction could mean that you cannot photograph or upload photographs of monuments that have been erected in the past 100 years. Or it could mean that you cannot photograph and document or upload photographs of structures, statues, etc., where the artist is still alive. So now this restricts the documentation of the recent past or conversation about the recent past in the online platform, right? So yeah, in short, to be able to upload images to a free knowledge platform such as Wikimedia Commons and to reuse it, your country needs to have freedom of panorama. Apart from this, obviously there are restrictions of gender access, restrictions of the way we host. The way we define heritage in general, since most of our participants are lay public who may not be engaging with the concept of dissonance or dissonant heritage, it becomes important for us to simplify the meaning of dissonant or dissonant heritage and communicate it to them in a manner that is understandable or relatable for them to even consider participating in such competitions.
I would like to ask you to conclude the presentation so we have also a time for the interaction.
Right. So yeah, so just to conclude, there have been a lot of challenges and we are trying to basically work around that. And yeah, so thank you for being part of my presentation and listening to me and giving me the space to talk about what we've been doing as part of Wikilove's Monuments. Yeah, I'll be happy to move on to the slide of questions.
Thank you very much, Mesha. So I guess we'll see the first slide of question in a moment. And you can tell us about it.
Yes. Yeah, so as I mentioned, there are various ways in which we can use photographs as part of our projects to initiate conversation among the public, with the communities to get various narratives, to be included in the larger storytelling process. So I'd like to know, in your opinion, how useful have you found photographs as a tool of documenting heritage and memory as part of your projects? Or are you interested as using these kinds of tools. So I see a lot of people, 78% of the people who have responded so far find it very interesting. I'd actually like to know, like, how have you used it in your projects? Maybe, leave a comment in the chat for me to read later, to reflect on. So I see nobody has said that photographs are not important. Everyone, most of us feel that they're somewhat important, or at least, most of us feel that they're quite important. So yeah, I'd love to hear various ways in which you've used online documented photographs or physical photographs as part of the projects, or your communication strategies, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We can see now the next slide of question.
Right. So as I mentioned during my presentation, there are various challenges that we face in documenting heritage online, be it freedom of panorama, be it gendered access to a space, because of which, uh, female photographers cannot probably, document a couple of spaces or monuments or buildings, etc. Is it could it be like lack of accessibility of internet facilities? So a lot of countries in the global south, face issues of accessible internet, or technology such as digital cameras. Not everyone has access to digital cameras in global south. So what are some challenges that you face in your countries around documentation of cultural heritage online? Okay, so accessibility is a major issue. So funding, private ownership. Yes, okay. Prejudice. Oh, that's interesting. I'd like to know more about that. What kind of prejudice do people face in terms of documentation? Lack of funding, yes. So a lot of heritage sites that are not in use often go into a very, very uh, not aesthetically pleasing state. They're completely in ruin, which then makes the photographer feel that, hey, I don't think this is worthy of photographing or documenting because it's in such a ruined state, right? So that also we see as a demotivating factor for documenting heritage or certain heritage sites online. Technological access, attitudes, permissions, indifference, local volunteers. Yes, that is again another issue that, especially because Wiki Loves Monuments is a largely volunteer driven project. Lack of local volunteers to actually host competitions in certain countries becomes a big challenge in getting documentation of sites from that location. I think we have a lot of interesting insights. Maybe we could move on to the next question, Dora.
It's in interest of time, because the next question is a big question. It's about what are those questions. So I also propose that we keep it for the last 1 hour so people can contact you directly and maybe exchange.
Sure. Yeah.
And, thank you very much, Mesha, for this presentation and for the valuable work that you're doing for Wiki Loves Monuments, and thank you everybody for participating actively in the Slido and in the general Agora. And now we have the last presentation in the main room, and it's by Professor Alexandre Koska from the University of Strasbourg in France, who is presenting Dissonant Heritage and European Citizenship, Erasmus Mundus Master Euroculture, and the summer school, which is upcoming.
Yes. Yeah, could I please have the first slide?
Okay, so you would like your slides to be shared?
Yes, please.
So they're, I'm sure
yeah,
they're
I already sent various messages to the administrator.
Sure, I'm sure they will share the screen in a second, and maybe you can already start with the topic.
Yeah, first I would like to express my gratitude for inviting me to this forum, and I would already like to congratulate the organizers for their wonderful work. I will try to be brief as we are running a little bit behind schedule. As Jan already stated, I've been a participant in the last years at the Dissonant Heritage Action Group because of my research on the status of German heritage in France, Strasbourg, and the now Polish city of Poznan. But I'm here as a representative of one of the biggest Erasmus Mundus networks, which has been active for 25 years, the Euroculture Master Program. Yeah, next slide, please. So in the time span of 25 years, the diploma has had roughly 1,600 students from all over the world, which are now active at all parts in European society, but also on other continents. You can see the structure of our networks, 8 universities on the slide, and you are invited to visit our website for more detailed information. Next slide, please. One core feature of our diploma is the organization of a summer school called IP, Intensive Program, which brings together the roughly 80 students of a cohort, which are following their studies in one of the 8 partner universities. You can see the topics chosen for that summer school in the past years. As was outlined by Dr. Falek earlier, learning about Europe's distant heritage is also part of a more comprehensive discussion about values and aims of European integration. For that reason, it seemed important to my colleagues and me to choose the topic of distant heritage in order to transmit to future leaders in society the lessons that can be retained for the future, looking at dissonant pasts. Next slide, please. During the summer school in Strasbourg, from July 1st to July 7, students and academics will discuss the questions linked to distant heritage in various formats. They will present a so-called IP paper related to the topic, of which will be discussed by fellow students and a jury of specialists in the field, and they will participate at lectures given by invited scholars working in that field. They will also see distant heritage on the ground, as Strasbourg, torn into the antagonism between France and Germany, and 2 wars in the lifespan of 1 generation, is a minefield of European remembrance. Next slide, please. In order to assist students on focusing on distant heritage and to break free from first impressions, which might be misleading because they are dictated by pain and emotions, I made a critical heritage reader for student use, which was open for restricted use since November of last year. Next slide, please. One of the next steps would be to expand and consolidate this collector, which consists by now of roughly 40 core texts, as well as social and artistic reactions to what could be termed dissonant heritage in a broader sense. The reader indeed opens the perspective to more general questions outside of built dissonant heritage, because at the summer school we are not only working on built heritage, even this is a central part of the Strasbourg surrounding. Dissonant heritage has the advantage to also integrate other parts of heritage, such as ecological issues, discrimination in the field of justice, or historical distortions, particularly for minorities unable to influence the narrations of the past. Next slide, please. This brings me to our particular definition of distant heritage, which might slightly differ from what we have heard until now. As said earlier, we are first and foremost interested in the political and social dimension of distant heritage, as our idea is to use it for a definition of European citizenship. Basically, there is a widely felt crisis of the foundations of European society. Not later than yesterday, Emmanuel Macron has made a passionate wake-up speech in Dresden, Réveillez-vous, about the necessity to counteract the feeling of democracy breaking away and giving way to various forms of extremism. In a way, the whole of the European Union is steering from the mid-2020s onwards to a crisis similar to that of the Weimar Republic in the 1920s. Even if I don't always agree with Macron, I think his analysis and the need to wake up to distant heritage is unfortunately correct. So we have to enlarge the use that was made by the cultural geographers Tunbridge and Ethworth in the mid-1990s and integrate it into a larger perspective on the so-called debate on the authorized heritage discourse. Heritage is indeed not an object, but a social process, which up to now was more frequently used to put to sleep than to wake up. Next slide, please. We're all aware that dissonance is a term which is widely used in music. For example, the first performance of The Rites of Spring of Stravinsky in Paris caused an uproar among the public. Uproar which has become hard to understand with the privilege of distance. Next slide. Basically, there is the idea that just in music, dissonance leads to harmony once a better and more thorough understanding has taken place. That idea is also underlying the various projects undertaken by the European institutions, first by the Council of Europe. The first larger initiative, the Cultural Roots of Europe, for instance, suggests that with historical distance and knowledge, the complex and sometimes violent tapestry of European history becomes harmonious. To quote, thus, the Santiago roots serve both as a symbol reflecting over 1,000 years of European history and as a model of cultural cooperation for Europe as a whole. Next slide, please. The Finnish scholar Tuuli Ladismäki and her colleagues therefore subtly hint at an over-optimistic interpretation scheme, which implicitly aims to dissolve dissonance into a broader picture of shared optimism. Next slide, please. Pushing this narrative a little further, one ends up with a picture that is not so far from the strategic narrative of invented traditions which characterized the nation building of the 19th century. The French historian Anne-Marie Thiès showed in her work how various parts of history are forcefully glued together and later on termed a puzzle. This suggests that all these elements actually already belong together until a master crafter, like Prussia in the case of Germany, had to come in to put things together. Today, Putin's memory politics is underlying the full-scale war against the puzzle piece of Ukraine. Next slide, please. So how can we keep dissonance alive and not blur its contours? My personal definition is therefore inspired by an interdisciplinary research group in Berlin, which works on filtering in all aspects. I think that this approach is useful. Broadly, one could define dissonant heritage as that what cannot be filtered away. Dissonant heritage is not only polyphonic and multi-layered, but it escapes categories and, if respected as such, is not prone to become part of official strategies to construct or reframe national narratives. Next slide. Therefore, we can go back with new eyes to a debate which happened in the mid-1980s and which was launched by the philosopher and sociologist Habermas. He developed what could be termed a negative identity building, configured around values and not stories, with the question of the dissonant heritage as such, the Holocaust, as its core. This approach is still valuable and can be broadened, thanks to the term dissonant heritage, also to new fields such as ecology. New slide.
And I'll ask you to conclude.
That is actually the last slide. That's is
perfect timing.
fortunate. It seems, at least in my own eyes, that Strasbourg is a particularly relevant place to discuss these issues because of its history and the overwhelming presence of the past in the city. While Brussels is rather associated to the political decision-making, Strasbourg is associated rather with humanistic values, represented especially by the presence of the Council of Europe. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. Thank you for this presentation, and let's see what you have prepared for our audience. in the next slide of questions.
Yes. Yeah, so the question is about the advantage of using the term dissonant heritage. Is there actually a difference between difficult heritage, dark heritage, contested heritage, or other forms of heritage? So what is in a way the sharp angle of dissonant heritage? I tried to explain it, but maybe you don't agree with it. So for me, dissonant heritage, to put it in a nutshell, is what cannot be filtered away. Yeah, so what comes out mostly is contested, difficult, uncomfortable. It depends on the point of view, indeed. Controversial, uncomfortable. Yes. So what I like about the idea of distant heritage is basically its spiky character. It's not a comfortable armchair. You can't rest on it. It resists being framed into a coherent national narrative and projects you, if you want it or not, into the future, and you have to reflect about it. So complex and contested, yes, uncomfortable in various ways are terms that are also coming up with you. Yes, the idea of legacy. Of course, a legacy which cannot be accepted as such, which has to be debated. Yeah, unobvious. I think that is also interesting. Unobvious. Yeah, sensitive. Yeah, because it's hurting. Distant heritage is also about emotions. It's about feelings. And as we saw at the very beginning when Dora made its Slido, it's also about pain. So it's obviously something which doesn't leave you indifferent, which is the contrary of comfortable, yeah, uncomfortable. That is one of the words that comes up also in various framings. Yeah, the question of continuity, of course, because distant heritage is a broken form of narrative. That is actually the core point of Habermas, who says that if you want it or not, the Holocaust really is a moment where heritage cannot be proclaimed to be continuous, and it's impossible to frame German history into one continuous narrative. One has to accept that you have to start from this discontinuity and from that negative aspect.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have time for one more question in Slido.
Yeah. Yeah, so the other question is about the use of distant heritage for European citizenship, which is at the core of our summer school. So how can it enhance? How can it consolidate? How can it not only interrogate, but really make stronger European citizenship? That means the idea not to belong to a national community, but rather to a future-oriented group of people who question who they actually are, and therefore are able to confront historical distortions, as was stated earlier, which are able also to integrate into their personal history different points of view for minorities, for instance, which are left outside the, let's say, quote unquote, normal narrative of European history. Yeah, I see that the idea of complexity comes up very often. Yes, also the psychological barriers, because you have to somehow try to not to identify with, but at least to understand different points of view. Yes, and of course, treat history with less emotion. And I think especially when we look right now at the terrible conflict between Israel and Palestine, which is full of emotions which are very hard to break free from. and which trigger, especially among students, a very, very hard crisis of identification. With whom should we side, or do we have to side? That is very, very important. I think integrating psychology and integrating these emotions, I think, is very important when we deal with heritage, and that idea of dissonance, which already points at a certain unease, might help us to assess these borders. Yes, and of course, from uneasiness, one moves also to the idea that you have to be informed. Like when you are in front of a disease, you have to understand why you are suffering, and you try to get informed in some way or another. So distant heritage is also an incentive to go beyond what you already know and to learn more about what is difficult in the past, not only for you, but also for others. Yeah, and I think that's the last point, the shared nature of heritage, trying to understand what makes heritage difficult, not only for you, but also for the other.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you for
Thank
this
you very
valuable
much.
insights and for the perfect moderation of the Slido question.
It
This
was the
was
first
really
time.
great. I can see that. Really great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with this, we are actually finishing our session 2, and we are moving to the session 3. But before closing the session 2, I wanted to say that we believe that this Dissonant Heritage Action Group is extremely valuable, and there is a lot of potential into developing it further. And one of the steps that we are going to do that is to develop a dedicated website that Jan already mentioned, where in an understandable, attractive way, people could learn about Dissonant Heritage, about the group, about the network and their projects. And therefore, we are now starting to develop new domain, which is dissonantheritage.info. You have it now in the chat. It is still a very, it's just a prototype. We just reserved this domain, but it will be further developed. There will be also inside parts, so members can log in and can learn about the next event. And the idea is to be a very useful tool for the group, for informing others so that they can join and to make the meetings even more easier to coordinate. So yeah, I hope many of you will join the group and will contribute to this project and to this with their project to this website. And now we will continue to the most diverse part of the program. And sorry for those noises, we couldn't fix them. Sorry for that, and thank you for the patience. But yes, so now we're going to the most diverse part, and this event is called Heritage Agora because of our digital marketplace. And we will have 15 presenters from 10 countries in a moment, and all you need to do is to choose a topic. We have 7 rooms on offer for you, and you can move freely through them as you want through the entire time. The first project will be presented in just a moment. The second project will start half an hour after that, and as we are going about 10 minutes after schedule, so this will mean that's whatever the time is where you are. So in 4 minutes, we'll start the marketplace, and 30 minutes after that, so this will be 10 after, we will move to the second topic. So you can see in the program is posted also now in the chat. You can see there. So the first topic, it will be for the next half an hour, and the second topic will be for the second half an hour. And each room has a moderator who will facilitate the presenter and watch for the timing. And after the end of the marketplace, you will have 1 more hour for free interaction and networking. And this is a chance to speak directly with the presenters and the other participants. And then at exactly 1:30 Central European Time, which is 2:30 Eastern European Time, the platform will be closed. So to allow the conversation to flow and not interrupt them, there will be no coming back into this main room for final words. Therefore, now, on behalf of the entire team and all the partners, I want to thank every presenter, every volunteer and participant in this Heritage Agora. And within a day, we'll send you feedback form, which will be very important for us if you can fill it in. This will help us to develop our next event, because we are planning already our next Heritage Agora, which will be at the same place and the same time in 1 year. So it will be on the 28th of May, 2025. So we are planning ahead, and it will be again online. But again, as said, there are the other opportunities for interaction in between. So I want to say thank you and official goodbye in this part, and hello of the marketplace, because this is definitely not the end. And now you will be able to choose one of the 7 rooms. I really hope we won't have technical problems, but 2 things to share. So first, if something happens and the program throws you out, please come back. We are here. Second, it is possible that because you chose a specific room the first time, the Zoom will put you directly in the same room. If this happens, I mean, you can still go on the breakout rooms and choose freely where you want to go. So that you will be not automatically redirected afterwards, after you have met your choice. And now I guess some of you already know where they want to go, but I'll just very briefly go through the rooms if you don't remember them or if you don't see the planning. So we have in room 1, networks and tools. You hear first about the toolbox of Dissonant Heritage, and then about the Atrium network. In room 2, it's about reuse and repurposing, where the first presentation will be about Design Academy Zalek, and the second will be about a Memento Park in Budapest. Room number 3 will explore abandoned typologies with the Oranian mine city of Stay in Romania and the Ottoman public baths in Bulgaria. Room number 4 is the borderlands and migration. So you can learn about migrateur decolonial walks first, and then about the histories in the borderlands of Europe. Room number 5 is dedicated to the Ukrainian Soviet heritage, with a presentation to the industrial cities of Donbas region, and another one for the artistic reflections on endangered Ukrainian Soviet heritage. Room number 6. So here I want to draw your attention. Unfortunately, Sandra, who is presenting the first project, because of health issues, couldn't join us. So in room number 6, you have only one presentation, and this will be on the project Monuments in Bulgaria. And this will be the first and only presentation in this room. If you want to hear that, it will be right now. And last but definitely not least, room number 7. You can learn more about public awareness with the presentation on heritage landscapes and community awareness first in Wales, and then the second presentation on socialist modernism project. So now you can choose your room by clicking on it. Goodbye here in the big round, and see you at the marketplace.